The music was soft, the chandeliers glittered like frozen waterfalls, and the air smelled of roses and expensive champagne. Yet, at a corner table near the back, one man sat alone. He had the kind of presence that couldn't be ignored: tall, broad-shouldered, a face that had graced magazines and financial journals. His name was Khalid Al Mansour, a billionaire CEO from Dubai, known for building an empire of technology and real estate across continents. He was used to boardrooms, private jets, and deals worth billions. But tonight, he was just another lonely man at a wedding where everyone else was wrapped in laughter, dance, and love. Khalid sat stiffly, nursing his glass of sparkling water. His sharp black suit fit him perfectly, but he looked out of place. He had flown in because the groom was a business partner's son, but he had no real friends in the room. He had money, yes. He had power, influence, and fame. But none of those things kept him company tonight. His eyes wandered over the hall filled with couples leaning into each other, whispering, stealing kisses, smiling with eyes that glowed with connection. And that was the one thing his wealth could never buy: love. That's when she appeared. She was carrying a tray of empty glasses, moving between tables with a natural grace. Her skin glowed under the soft lighting, her curls pulled back neatly, and her uniform wasn't glamorous, but her eyes, sharp, warm, and endlessly kind, caught his attention. Her name was Amara. She was a 26-year-old waitress, working 2 jobs to support her younger brother through college after their mother passed away. She had no reason to notice him, a stranger in a room full of guests, but as her gaze flicked toward his table, she saw something others had ignored: loneliness. And without overthinking it, she leaned slightly as she passed by and whispered, "Pretend you're with me." Khalid blinked, startled. "Excuse me?" Amara smiled faintly, still balancing her tray, her voice low so only he could hear. "Everyone's staring like you don't belong here. I'll make it look like you do. Just, go along with it." For a moment, Khalid didn't know what to say. No one ever spoke to him like that: direct, playful, almost protective. Then, against his usual guarded instincts, he nodded. The next time Amara passed his table, she set down a drink she had accidentally brought for him and leaned close, laughing at something he hadn't even said. From across the hall, it looked like they were sharing a moment, a secret only 2 people in the room understood. And as the minutes passed, the billionaire CEO and the waitress found themselves slipping into a strange, unspoken companionship. At first, it was just a game, Amara saving him from the pitying glances of strangers. But as the night wore on, Khalid found himself drawn to her spirit. She was different from the people he usually met, who either feared him, wanted something from him, or treated him like a prize. Amara didn't seem impressed by his tailored suit or his Rolex. In fact, she had no idea who he was. To her, he was just a lonely man trying to survive a wedding where everyone else belonged. Between serving courses, she would stop by his table, whispering little jokes, rolling her eyes about the drunk uncle dancing in the middle of the floor, or telling him stories about weddings she had worked before. Khalid laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. He hadn't realized how starved he was for genuine conversation, for someone who saw him as a person and not a billionaire. But their growing connection wasn't unnoticed. Some of the wealthy guests began whispering, frowning at the sight of a waitress getting too comfortable with a man of Khalid's stature. One of the bridesmaids even approached Amara during a break and hissed, "You don't belong near him. People like you don't mix with people like him." The words stung, but Amara shrugged them off. She had faced worse in her life: racism, poverty, and countless reminders of how society liked to box people in. But when she looked back at Khalid, something inside her refused to let him sit alone, even if it meant risking whispers and judgment. Later that evening, Khalid stepped outside for some air. Amara followed a few minutes later, pretending she was just clearing her head. Under the night sky, lit by strings of golden lights, he finally asked, "Why did you do it? Why did you decide to help me tonight?" She smiled softly, hugging her arms against the chill. "Because you looked like you needed someone. I know what it feels like to be invisible in a room full of people. No one should have to sit through that alone." Her words pierced through him. For years, Khalid had lived surrounded by people yet entirely alone, his family distant, his friendships shallow, his relationships transactional. And here was a young woman who had nothing, yet she saw him more clearly than anyone ever had. The challenges began soon after. Khalid tried to see Amara again after the wedding, but she resisted. She didn't want to be another story in the tabloids, waitress chases billionaire. She didn't want her life turned upside down, and she didn't believe a man like him could really understand the struggles she carried. Her brother's tuition, their small apartment, the night she went to bed hungry just to make sure he ate. How could someone who had everything possibly fit into her world? But Khalid was persistent. He visited the small diner where she sometimes worked morning shifts, dressed casually so no one would recognize him. He sat at the counter, drinking burnt coffee, waiting just to see her smile. Slowly, Amara realized he wasn't chasing her out of boredom or ego. He wanted something real. Yet, society didn't make it easy. Some of Khalid's business associates warned him that being seen with her would damage his image. Amara faced whispers from co-workers accusing her of being a gold digger, though she never once accepted his gifts. They fought through doubts, misunderstandings, and the heavy pressure of two very different worlds colliding. But love, real love, is forged in fire. And every time Khalid tried to step back, he remembered that first night, the moment she leaned down and whispered, "Pretend you're with me." He didn't want to pretend anymore. He wanted it for real. Years later, when Khalid stood at another wedding, this time his own, it wasn't in a glittering ballroom but a small garden filled with family, friends, and laughter. Amara walked down the aisle, radiant, no longer in a waitress uniform but in a simple white dress that fit her like it was made for her. She had become his anchor, his compass, the person who reminded him of what truly mattered. And as he looked at her, he realized she had given him something no billion-dollar deal ever could: a home for his heart. Final message for video. Sometimes, the most powerful connections come when you least expect them. A man with everything can still be lonely, and a woman with nothing can still have the greatest gift to offer: kindness. Amara reminded Khalid, and all of us, that one small act of compassion can change a life forever. If this story touched your heart, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Would you have done what Amara did, reached out to a stranger sitting alone? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, make sure you subscribe to Be Kind Always, where every story reminds us of the power of love, compassion, and humanity.